Terence Bud Crawford becomes a 4-division champion, but it wasn't easy against Israil Madrimov. Listen, Terence Crawford beat Israil Madrimov. Close fight, people. It was definitely a close fight. I really feel I expected more from both fighters. That's just being real. It was solid. It was a solid fight. But the whole thing was kind of like overhyped, if you will. Right? Like they put this into a soccer stadium. They had Eminem perform. It was supposed to be this like grandiose. Some people were even saying this is the biggest card boxing has ever seen. After completely watching it and completing the card, it wasn't none of that. I've seen cards that definitely rival that. The main event, there were even parts late in the fight where people that I know that went, they were saying some of the people were leaving early and things like that, right? Crawford, Madrimov, I mean, it's not like a fight that I even really want to break down a bunch of stuff because it was like kind of a tooth and nail fight, and it was very apparent early on especially that they respected each other and what each other was doing. So you had for several rounds in the fight, neither guy was willing to, put their foot on the gas. That's just what I seen. So later in the fight, I think Crawford's a true fighter. He has a mean streak. He's a true warrior. I think he's probably not going to admit this, but I think he truly knows that the fight was close and it was possible that judges could possibly have him down. It wouldn't be out of the question. And I think deep down inside, because I seen in the post-fight interview, he didn't admit it. He said, "Oh, I beat him. The whole world knows I beat him, blah, blah, blah." But you can't tell me in the championship rounds before rounds 12 and 11 that if you were Team Crawford, entering the last 3-4 rounds, that you would be very, very confident. Now that they have the victory and got the belt and stuff, they can say whatever they want. But if I were Terence Crawford, given how the fight played out, I wouldn't be so sure of it. But Crawford did bite down and he tried to press and get some things done. There was even some moment where it looked like he caught Madrimov. I don't know the exact round, maybe round 9. And he caught Madrimov, and I don't know how badly he hurt him, but I say to some severity he hurt him and caught his attention, if you will. And I believe that's just a testament to Terence Crawford, the doggedness that he possesses. He's a dog, and he just has a true grit and determination and willingness to win. Some of the early rounds, Madrimov probably played it too patient. I actually like what he was doing, but I think he needed to do what he was doing in the first couple rounds, but start to introduce more of an offensive selection, which he did in more of the middle rounds to late rounds, right? But what gave Crawford all the problems in the world is, one, he had moved up. 2, Madrimov was better than he expected, probably. Guy with over 300 Emmys. He knew his way around the ring. He was no spring chicken. And this is what I told you guys. This is why I told you I didn't really even like the fight for Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford has this much to gain by beating Madrimov. I mean, outside of the accolade of becoming a champion. But I already told you, I know boxing. I know the Bud Buddies get mad when I say these things, but they can't prove me wrong, because to prove me wrong, you would have to lie. Madrimov, what they won't tell you is he's not this long-standing champion. In fact, Jermell Charlo, if you guys remember, He is the 154 undisputed guy who beat Castano. Remember, they fought for undisputed. First fight was a draw. They rematched, and then he knocked out Castano, right? It was his decision when he was undisputed to not fight Tim Tszyu and not defend any of his belts and fight Canelo because he got the call to fight Canelo at 168. That's what screwed it up for Jermell Charlo. And one by one, he started getting stripped and ripped and had to relinquish belts. That's how Madrimov became a champion. He wasn't like a guy who beat a guy to become a champion. He beat a guy, but he didn't beat a champion guy. And what people don't realize, Madrimov just became a champion in March. So you see, everything Boxing Ego has said makes a lot of sense now. This was not really a fight where Crawford was really going to gain anything. You are in a fight that people believe, not ego, because I told you it was going to be a tough fight, but nobody knew who Madrimov was. And he only had 11 fights and 10 wins. And he fought Michel Soro, and even though he avenged it in a rematch, he didn't look that great in the first fight, right? So he had some shaky performances. So a guy with 11 fights, a guy with no profile in America, a guy who had some inactivity, and a brand new champion through a vacancy Madrimov was a champion from, let's say, March when he won the vacant belt to now August. So yes, Crawford became a 4-division champ, but again, you didn't lift the belt off of like a champion who's defended, you know what I mean, like Jermell Charlo when he was undisputed. That's the reality of it. So as I always said before the fight, this really wasn't a fight that was going to benefit Crawford. They're trying to build him as like a mega star and say he's selling out. This event didn't sell out. It is what it is. And the fact that some people believe Madrimov won the fight. Eddie Hearn's outraged. People are agreeing. Some people think Crawford won. Some people think it's a draw. But this is what I warned you guys about regarding this fight. There really wasn't much here for Crawford. But I think, that once again, bad business Bud, Crawford's stubbornness, he doesn't want to work with PBC. He looks at PBC like they're the enemies. So he ran to Turkey and Riyadh season and got this set up because he couldn't have his way. Because he was a super champion in the previous division and undisputed at 147, Terence Crawford had dibs on Fundora Tim Tszyu winner. But because he found out that PBC, they were trying to make their own fights, you know, like Errol Spence might get the winner and stuff. Terence Crawford was like, oh, you know, basically screw you guys. I'll do my own thing. And then he went off to Riyadh season. And I don't think the mission was accomplished. Terence Crawford had a mouse under his eyes. You had Madrimov who had some bruising and reddening under his eyes. The fight wasn't like an all-time classic. It was really like a high-speed chess match with Madrimov and Crawford. Different people feel Crawford won. Different people feel Madrimov won. Some people think it's a draw. So I don't really think it did that much for Crawford. I mean, yes, you picked up the hardware, but you did it from a brand new champion who's been a champion, like I said, look it up, for a few months, that nobody knows. So I mentioned this before the fight. Optically, I don't think it fares that well because a guy on paper, especially for casuals, a guy with 11 fights gave you all you can handle. So Terence Crawford, in his fight with Errol Spence, he went from Superman. That's what people like, man, who could beat this guy? Because he looked amazing. Now, I told you, I think something was wrong with Errol Spence. People said I was making up excuses and this, that, and the third. I gave you my honest opinion. I said credit to Terence Crawford. It's because at the end of the day, it's not Terence Crawford's fault if anything is wrong with the opponent, and I understand that, so fair play. Crawford showed up on the night. He was able to execute. Bad night in the office for Errol Spence. I don't know what was up, but it looked like something was up. That's the elephant in the room. But the Bud Buddies, they're like, nah, Crawford's unbeatable, and they started talking and jibber-jabbing and saying like, oh, you know, Charlo will get destroyed. No one at 54, Fundora will get destroyed by Crawford. Then they started really getting out of their mind. and saying that Canelo Alvarez at 168 is easy work for Crawford. I mean, if you're real with yourself and then you look at the fight that Crawford had at 54, and even if you think he won, Madrimov gave you all that you could handle. And Crawford post-fight was like, he's strong. Yeah, man, I felt the power different and blah, blah, blah. If you're saying that at 154, then what would you be saying when Canelo hit you? We're talking Madrimov, a guy with 11 fights, 10 wins, versus Canelo, who has like 60 fights and has been fighting as high as 175 twice with Kovalev and Bivol, and he's undisputed, or he was undisputed until recently, but he has several fights at 168. He even fought at 160. When I said these things, you guys said Boxing Ego was hating. Now who's the hater? It looks stupid. I had no interest in Crawford fighting Canelo at 168, but you guys let the Riyadh season and Turkey and Canelo, or not Canelo, but Crawford, talk it up and keep calling out this man. And now it just looks stupid because now people are saying, oh, 154 might be the top out point or the limit that Crawford can even go. His power, it looked more manageable in the Madrimov fight. Like, he never really rocked Madrimov. He didn't drop him. He never rocked him to the point where it was like, oh, okay, he's out of here. And Madrimov also hurt him. You know, both fighters are top level, so they had a good poker face. But it just, I don't really feel like this furthered the Crawford movement. And Crawford will be 37 next month. And he's talking about, I'm the face of boxing. Well, he didn't say the face of boxing. Let me correct that. He said it's the Terence Crawford era. But from where I'm seeing it, a lot of what he's been promoting and suggesting, like calling out Canelo, it just seems a lot more far-fetched now. And his team has kind of little boyed Jerron Boots Ennis, like, oh, he's not ready. But Boots is a young, strong, young man, you know, and he's calling out Crawford. He even pulled up and was ringside for this particular fight. And for me, what I do believe is I feel this fight with Madrimov, you tried to distance yourself from Boots to make it look like you are on such a different level and Boots is entirely not ready. But you want to fight Canelo at 68. And based on this performance, even if you had Crawford winning, based on this performance, I truly believe instead of this fight and this performance, because boxing, you are only as good as your last performance. I feel like this Crawford performance, he looked a lot more human. He was hittable. He was whiffing and missing shots, so his accuracy didn't look as good. He's been inactive. His star power is not what they said. He's not this mega star. He's selling out. It wasn't a sellout crowd. So instead of bridging the gap, like he said, the Crawford era, and growing and getting the fans to believe that you have a shot with Canelo at 168, instead of like bridging that gap, you've actually furthered the gap because at best you struggled at 154. And now the Canelo fight, to me, and I think most reasonable people that aren't groupies, they're looking at that as like kind of a pipe dream. If you're talking about the guy is strong at 154, how you gonna move up past 160 all the way to 168 and fight a guy with 60 fights as decorated as Canelo, who also has a granite chin? So I don't think that's advisable, and I think this fight actually hurt that fight. I don't think people are going to want to talk about Terence Crawford and Canelo so much. Before, and see, that's why I said you're only as good as your last performance. Before the conversation, I guess, not me, because I told you the fight was dumb. Weight classes exist for a reason. But no, you guys said there was something wrong with me and I was hating and stuff like that. But now I think with this fight with Madrimov, it was a reality check, and it brought Crawford back down to life. And I don't think people are going to really want to entertain those conversations the same. It's kind of like when Devin Haney lost to Ryan Garcia initially, and all of a sudden the conversations about Devin Haney can beat Gervonta Davis, it just stopped. You're only as good as your last performance. And although Crawford looked sharp in spots, it didn't look like throughout the fight the same exact Crawford that we've been seeing. I think he kept, earlier in the fight especially, he kept his hands at bay. He kept his hands at home a lot more because he respected Madrimov. And I told you, Madrimov was doing this bouncy. He was like really bouncy. And he didn't have a bunch of literal head movement, but he was feinting a lot. And he was like real up and down. Like, I don't know. It was just very unique to him. And it kind of reminds me of, if you look at Shakur Stevenson, he struggled in the first 3 rounds with Artem Harutnyan. And when you get some of these guys, these Eastern European guys from Uzbekistan and things like that, sometimes they have these unique styles. And unless you're fighting over there and sparring over there and stuff, you might not be as familiar with people doing some of these movements as much. It was a very unique feint, and I think that was very effective for Madrimov. In fact, the only thing I would tell Madrimov to change is take more chances early and assert yourself as the bigger guy, because Madrimov looked like he could fight at that pace all day, and he was given all the issues in the world with Crawford. It messed up Crawford's timing. Plus, you got to think about it. Crawford moved up in weight, so naturally your power might not be as, impactful. Moving up in weight, you're putting on muscle and filling out and stuff. You might be a hair slower and stuff like that. Plus, Crawford hasn't fought since the Errol Spence fight, so he might have been ring rusty. It was just kind of a weird fight, and I don't understand what this was supposed to do. I feel like what Riyadh season in America was supposed to do was to establish Terence Crawford as this, box office draw and, American fighter, the next Floyd Mayweather. That's what they were hoping to do with this. Turkey would constantly put out these posts and, he's putting up all these flyers and staircases got painting, and he was really trying to glamorize Terence Crawford, even after people like Bob Arum said, I can't make no money with this dude. He won't really promote. He's not a good self-starter. I'm losing a lot of money in this fight. Then you had Riyadh season, and they almost didn't want to listen to that from a business perspective, heed some of those warnings and take it into consideration, and they try to dump a bunch of money into trying to make Terence Crawford the it guy at age 37. And given that performance, I really, truly struggle to believe that that mission was accomplished. You had to give away tickets. You were slashing the prices for tickets. Eminem was posting on his story that he was giving away tickets if you sign up and stuff like that. So I just feel like this was kind of a failure. And then Madrimov, if anything, people are like, all right, you went a guy with 40 fights who's pound for pound top 3, you just went 12 rounds with him and gave him all he can handle. So I think Madrimov will be perfectly fine because that was great experience for him, and nobody knew who he was to begin with except for diehard boxing fans. So I really struggled to see what this accomplished. And I think Crawford, he chooses to make these almost weird decisions, and this is how it plays out. So I think Crawford was sharp in spots, but it paled in comparison to some of his better work. And it really looked like 154 is most likely a ceiling for him. I know, me personally, I never wanted to see the Canelo fight at 168. But after that performance, I really don't want to see the fight. I think it's foolish at this point. I don't even think people should be talking about that fight. It just seemed like too much of a pipe dream. Crawford didn't look strong enough at 54 to carry up to 168, and he definitely doesn't look like he was non-hittable, and I just struggle to believe he would be durable at 168. But Crawford, I think he wants to take a shortcut. He wants to use like, oh, I got 2 SBs and, use that and just skip the line, cut in front of David Benavidez, Morrell, and whoever else wants to fight Canelo closer to where Canelo's been fighting. And again, I don't think that statement was made in the Madrimov fight. The fight was extremely close. The commentary sucked. And I don't care what the commentators were saying. They were like, oh, Crawford easily winning. I didn't see that. I thought the fight was extremely close. And both fighters could have done some things better, but that's such is life. Madrimov, I think he should have opened up, took a little bit more chances. And Crawford, same thing. But Crawford started taking chances, but he started taking chances when it was looking like he could lose the fight. Late in the fight, he was like, started going for broke a little bit more. And even in some of those moments, he was getting pot-shotted by Madrimov. Like he started getting something going in one of those later rounds, and then Madrimov caught him with the huge left, and another round caught him with the huge right. So I just have seen better from Crawford, and I think this performance set him back. I truly believe that. It set him back. You went from Superman in the Errol Spence fight to now looking like there's some definite kryptonite. People disrespecting Jermell Charlo and Fundora. I don't know that Crawford actually easily beats those. Like, I think, like I said, it's a reality check. Fundora is 6'7", and he has a leaky defense for sure, but he's a great inside fighter, and he has some power. So that's just punching upwards. It's just a different fight. And Madrimov was able to get to you. A 6'7" guy with way longer arms could potentially get to you. And it's not just about Fundora. I'm just saying in general. I think Crawford at 54, the fights are definitely going to get more challenging. Charlo, Madrimov rematch, Erickson Lubin. There's some talent at 54. Even the winner of Virgil Ortiz versus Boachuk. These are all interesting fights because Virgil Ortiz was struggling to make weight and then had to move up to 54. He's young, he's strong. Now he doesn't fight like Madrimov, but he does throw a lot of punches. He looks pretty durable. And if he could beat a guy like Boachuk, then him versus Crawford is a really good fight. And Mean Machine, who fought both Virgil Ortiz and Crawford, said that Mean Machine, he's on record saying that Virgil Ortiz definitely hits harder. So he was saying that at 47, imagine at 54, the younger, more aggressive Virgil Ortiz probably hits harder. Now, I'm not saying it's an easy fight because first of all, I don't even do fight predictions for fights that are not made. If you guys watch my channel, you know that's my style. I'm just saying from here on out at age 37, I feel like the fights are going to get a lot harder for Crawford in these new weights. And then now I don't even know if he could go back down to 47 because he did a recent interview saying 154 is hard to make. So I don't know. I kind of feel weird about the Madrimov fight because I think it's kind of like a waste of time because it didn't really, if you look at the whole card, that's what I feel. Pitbull Cruz was garnering a lot of fans, a lot of fanfare. I seen even getting Pitbull tattoos, and in Mexico they had a mural of Pitbull, and then he just got thoroughly outboxed. So that really set Pitbull back. Then you had Crawford, who was looking like Superman after the Errol Spence fight in the public's mind. Now you look at the comments, they're like, oh, you can't beat Canelo, blase blah. You look at Andy Ruiz, he's another popular guy. He didn't look that great. He wasn't throwing that many punches. He looked insanely tired. Jared Big Baby Anderson was top ranked hope for the American heavyweight division. He got knocked out by a UK fighter, or Martin Bacoli, who trains in the UK or Scotland or whatever. You know what I mean? So I just feel like people kept bringing up Riyadh season is amazing and stuff like that. But I don't really see how most people, especially like the popular, like I guess you could say the A-sides, I don't feel like their brands were enhanced by partaking in this card. David Morrell, he was in there tough with that hot rod dude. So before when he was on PBC, he was knocking dudes out and everybody was excited. But him moving up to 75 with that specific fighter he fought, Hot Rod, it kind of pushed him back a little bit. So I don't really know who benefited from this fight happening and this card happening. And that does include Terence Crawford.